Hello everyone, and welcome to the DXD Tales. So we are back with an interesting movie on what if Issei was the immortal vampire king who ruled the eternal night. Issei x Krul Tepes x Rias Gremory, Seraph of the End x DXD. But before we start, I just want to remind you to please subscribe to my channel and hit the like button if you enjoy my content. Let's start the story. Chapter 1. Throne of Blood. Blood dripped from crystal goblets onto marble floors. The grand hall of Crimson Haven Fortress glittered with rubies and garnets embedded in obsidian walls, casting fractured crimson light across the assembled nobility. Ancient tapestries depicting forgotten wars hung between arched windows that revealed an eternal night sky, stars burning bright over a world that hadn't seen sunrise in 3 centuries. Issei Hyodo sat motionless on the crimson throne, one leg casually draped over the armrest, amber eyes scanning the proceedings with practiced disinterest. His fingers, adorned with ancient signet rings, tapped a rhythm known only to him against the fossilized dragon bone that formed his seat of power. Despite his youthful appearance, dark crimson hair falling just past his shoulders, features carved like a Renaissance sculpture's masterpiece, the weight of millennia hung in his gaze. The Eastern Territories report another uprising, Your Majesty, announced Lord Crowley, a portly vampire whose silk waistcoat strained against his frame. The humans have armed themselves with modified curse gear. 12 noble-born lost to their blades this month alone. Whispers rippled through the court, hisses of outrage mingling with fearful murmurs. Issei's expression remained unchanged, though his fingers ceased their tapping. And how many humans have your noble-born drained this month, Lord Crowley? Issei's voice carried effortlessly across the hall without him raising it, a skill perfected over countless centuries. I seem to recall Edding very specific quotas after the last incident. Crowley's jowls quivered. Your Majesty, surely you can't expect us to count every livestock. The temperature in the hall plummeted. Frost crystallized along the edges of goblets, and several lesser nobles stepped back instinctively. Issei hadn't moved, hadn't changed his relaxed posture, but power emanated from him in palpable waves that made the air itself heavy. They are not livestock, Lord Crowley. They are subjects. The blood tithe is set at levels that allow sustainable population growth. Issei straightened slightly, his casual posture now somehow more threatening than any display of rage. If humans are driven to desperate measures, I suspect someone has been taking more than their share. A tall, silver-haired figure stepped forward from the shadows with fluid grace. Farid Badaori, 7th progenitor, bowed with theatrical flourish, his Renaissance-era clothing making him appear like a character from some macabre opera. If I may, Your Eternal Majesty. Farid's voice lilted with an accent that hadn't existed in the human world for centuries. Perhaps this presents an opportunity rather than a problem. The human resistance grows bold because they believe they understand us. A demonstration of the old ways might remind them of their place. Several nobles nodded enthusiastically, but Issei's expression hardened imperceptibly. The old ways, he repeated, each word precise as a surgeon's cut. Tell me, Lord Badaori, which old ways do you propose? The indiscriminate slaughter that nearly extinguished humanity during the Black Death. The blood carnivals that almost revealed our existence to mortals. Or perhaps the factional wars that decimated our own kind before I united the bloodlines. Farid's smile remained fixed, though something dangerous flickered in his eyes. Merely a suggestion, my king. Your wisdom has preserved our kind for millennia, after all. Before Issei could respond, the massive doors at the far end of the hall swung open. The temperature, already cold, dropped further as a diminutive figure entered, her presence belying her childlike appearance. Pink hair framed a face of porcelain perfection, crimson eyes surveying the assembly with cool authority. Despite her small stature, nobles parted before her like waves breaking against stone. Krul Tepes, 3rd progenitor and Queen of Japan, approached the throne with measured steps. Unlike the other nobles with their ornate finery, she wore a simple black dress with crimson accents, practical yet elegant. The black boots that reached her thighs made no sound on the marble floor. The bloodless queen arrives, murmured someone too quietly for human ears to detect, but in a room full of vampires, anonymity was impossible. Krul's eyes flickered toward the voice, her expression unreadable. Unlike many who earned their titles through brutality, Krul's epithet came from her strict rationing of human blood, maintaining sustainable harvesting that kept her territories stable for centuries while others faced constant rebellion. Queen Tepes, Issei acknowledged, inclining his head slightly, a courtesy he rarely extended to anyone. Your presence honors us. I wasn't expecting you until tomorrow's summit. Circumstances change, Your Majesty. Her voice carried surprising depth for her small frame. Japan's West. RN Islands report anomalies that couldn't wait for formal proceedings. Issei's eyes narrowed fractionally. In a court where information was currency, speaking openly of problems was unusual. What our Krul had discovered must be significant indeed. Lord Crowley, Issei addressed the still nervous noble, investigate the eastern territories. Find which nobles exceeded their blood quotas and bring them before me. If the humans have legitimate grievances, address them. If they persist in violence afterward, then we discuss countermeasures. Crowley bowed stiffly, disappointment evident in his posture, and retreated into the crowd. Several nobles exchanged glances, clearly dissatisfied with the ruling but none daring to challenge it openly. Court is adjourned until tomorrow's summit, Issei announced. Rising fluidly from his throne. Standing at his full height, the ancient king cut an imposing figure despite his deceptively youthful appearance. Queen Tepes, join me in the observatory. Lord Bottori, assemble the council of progenitors. As the nobility dispersed in swirls of expensive fabric and quiet political maneuvering, Issei descended the obsidian steps, red-soled boots clicking softly against stone. Guards flanked him automatically, moving with the synchronized precision of centuries working together. To most observers, the king appeared perfectly composed, but Krul noted the subtle tension in his shoulders. It's worse than we thought, she said quietly as they walked the vaulted corridor leading from the main hall, their entourage maintaining a respectful distance behind them. It always is, Issei replied, the ghost of a smile touching his lips. But you wouldn't have come early for anything manageable. The observatory occupied the highest tower of Crimson Haven, a circular room with walls of glass offering unobstructed views of the starlit landscape. Ancient telescopes of brass and silver stood alongside modern equipment, a testament to Issei's willingness to embrace human innovation. Maps covered tables, some yellowed with age, others digital displays glowing with soft blue light. When the doors closed behind them, leaving the guards outside, Issei's carefully maintained facade shifted. His shoulders relaxed slightly, and he ran a hand through his crimson hair, a surprisingly human gesture for one so ancient. Now, tell me what NGS the Queen of Japan to my doorstep unannounced, he said, moving to a cabinet carved from a single piece of bloodwood. He withdrew a crystal decanter containing liquid too thick and dark to be wine. Strange energies in the sea near Okinawa, Krul replied, accepting the glass he offered. At first, we thought it was seismic activity, but then. She withdrew a small device from her pocket project an image onto the blank wall. A swirling vortex of purple-black energy hovered above choppy ocean waters, lightning crackling around its edges. This appeared 3 days ago. It's growing. Issei studied the image, centuries of experience not quite masking the flicker of concern in his eyes. A dimensional anomaly. Has anything emerged from it? Not yet, but the humans' instruments detected massive energy fluctuations last night. Krul sipped the crimson liquid, watching him over the rim of her glass. My scientists measured radiation signatures unlike anything recorded before. Issei placed his untouched glass on the table, approaching the projection with narrowed eyes. I've seen something similar, once. Nearly 800 years ago in what humans now call the Bermuda Triangle. What happened then? Nothing good. His expression darkened with memory. We lost an entire colony of nobles. The anomaly closed before I could investigate properly. He turned to face her, and for a brief moment, Krul glimpsed something ancient and terrible behind his carefully composed features, a reminder that despite his occasional benevolence, Issei Hyodo had conquered an unit. The vampire world through means few dared remember. How many know about this? He asked. Only my most trusted. Humans have noticed unusual weather patterns, but nothing more. Krul set down her glass. Farid suspects something. He's been unusually interested in my coastal territories lately. Issei's lip curled slightly at the mention of the seventh progenitor. Farid is always interested in everything he shouldn't be. A character flaw I've tolerated for far too long. A chime sounded from the communication system near the door. Your Majesty, came a voice, the council has assembled in the Chamber of Blood. Lord Batory requests your presence. Inform them we'll arrive shortly, Issei replied, then turned back to Krul. We'll discuss this with the council, but carefully. If these anomalies are what I suspect, panic would be counterproductive. And what do you suspect they are? Krul challenged, her crimson eyes meeting his without hesitation, a boldness few would dare. Issei's mouth tightened. Cheers in reality itself. And if they're appearing now, after all this time. He didn't finish the thought, instead moving toward the door with purpose. The convergence may finally be beginning. The word hung in the air between them, laden with implications neither wished to voice. The Chamber of Blood lived up to its name. Carved from a single massive ruby discovered beneath the fortress centuries ago, its walls gleamed wetly in the light of floating mage crystals. 13 chairs surrounded a circular table made of the same material, each seat carved with the sigil of a progenitor lineage. 5 seats remained perpetually empty, their occupants long dead from the wars before Issei's reign. 8 progenitors waited as Issei and Krul entered. Each represented the apex of vampire nobility. Their powers second only to the king himself. Farid Batory sat with languid grace, toying with an antique pocket watch. Beside him, Lest Kar, the diminutive fort, H progenitor, drummed his fingers impatiently against the table. Giels, the stoic second progenitor, stood rather than sat, his military bearing unchanged since his human days as a Norse warrior. Other progenitors filled their respective places. Ky Luke with his perpetual serene smile, Nyx Parthi looking bored as she examined her perfectly manicured nails, Gabel Parthi slouched with characteristic disrespect. Saito maintaining his customary silence in the shadows, and Lacus Welt, youngest of the progenitors, trying to mask his nervousness at being included in such august company. My friends, Issei began without preamble as he took his seat at the head of the table, we face an unprecedented situation. He nodded to Krul, who again projected the image of the anomaly. Reactions varied. Erd's eyes narrowed slightly. Farid's smile widened with interest, Nyx straightened in sudden attention. A dimensional rift, Issei continued, similar to one I encountered centuries ago. Queen Pays discovered this one near Okinawa 3 days past. It's growing. How delightfully apocalyptic, Farid commented, his voice lilting with inappropriate amusement. Is something coming through, or are we going somewhere? Unknown. Krul answered before Issei could. But the energy readings are increasing exponentially. Giels spoke, his deep voice resonating in the chamber. This explies the disturbances in my territories as well. Similar phenomena have appeared in Scandinavia, though smaller in scale. Murmurs spread around the table as other progenitors began reporting similar sightings. Issei listened, his expression growing more troubled with each account. They're appearing globally, he concluded once everyone had spoken. This is no isolated incident. What exactly are we dealing with, Your Majesty? Asked Lacus, voicing what the others were thinking. In all my studies of vampire history, I've found no mention of such phenomena. Because I ordered those records sealed, Issei replied, causing a ripple of surprise. The last time this occurred, it nearly destroyed our kind. I had hoped it would never happen again. He rose, moving to the center of the chom. Beer where an ancient mechanism was embedded in the floor. Pressing his palm against it, Issei released a small amount of his blood into the device. The chamber darkened as a 3-dimensional projectile materialized above the table, a complex array of interconnected spheres and planes. Most believe reality consists of a single dimension, our world. Some humans theorize about parallel universes. The truth is more complex. Issei manipulated the projection, expanding certain sections. Multiple dimensions exist alongside ours, separated by barriers that were established after the Great Cataclysm. That nearly extinguished all life across every realm. By whom? Asked, studying the projection with intense focus. By beings far older than even I, Issei answered, something ancient flickering behind his eyes. The dimensions were separated to prevent certain entities from gaining access to multiple realities simultaneously. Farid leaned forward, his usual playful demeanor replaced by genuine curiosity. And now these barriers are failing. How fascinating. One might wonder if someone is helping them along. Issei's gaze snapped to the seventh progenitor. A question I've been considering as well, Lord Batory. Before the tense moment could escalate, the chamber doors burst open. Chess Bell, one of Krul's most loyal soldiers, stumbled in, her uniform torn and bloodied. "Forgive the intrusion," she gasped, dropping to one knee. "Your Majesty, Queen Tepes, we're under attack." "Humans?" Erd asked, already reaching for his weapon. "No," Chess shook her head, eyes wide. With genuine fear, an emotion rarely seen in vampires of her station. "Something else. They came through a tear in the air itself. The eastern courtyard is overrun." Issei moved with blinding speed. No longer the measured monarch but a predator unleashed. "Secure the fortress," he commanded. "Erd, Krul, with me. The rest of you, establish a perimeter and evacuate the non-combatants." As they are ushered through the corridors of Crimson Haven, the sounds of battle echoed from beyond the walls. Screams, explosions, and underneath it all, a strange harmonic humming that seemed to vibrate through the very stone beneath their feet. They emerged onto a balcony overlooking the eastern courtyard. Below them, chaos reigned. A jagged purple-black tear hovered 10 feet above the ground, pulsing with malevolent energy. From its depths poured creatures that defied comprehension, writhing masses of shadow with too many limbs, eyes gleaming from impossible angles, mouths filled with geometrically perfect rows of teeth. Vampire guards fought valiantly, but their weapons passed through the entities with minimal effect. Where the creatures toyed blackened and crumbled like ancient parchment. "Abyssal ones," Issei murmured, his voice tight with recognition. Just as before, without hesitation, he vaulted over the balcony railing, dropping 30 feet to land with impossible grace amidst his embattled forces. As he straightened, the air around him shimmered with power. Crimson energy crackled along his arms, coalescing into wicked claws that extended from his fingertips. "Fall back and regroup," he commanded the guards. "Conventional weapons are useless. Form a perimeter and keep civilians clear." A shadow creature lunged toward a fallen vampire guard. Issei intercepted it with blinding speed, his crimson claws slicing through the entity with far more effect than the guard's weapons had managed. The creature emitted a sound like shattering glass as it dissolved into motes of darkness. Krul landed beside him, her childlike frame belying the devastating power she unleashed. With a flick of her wrists, chains of blood materialized from her palms, wrapping around two creatures and constricting until they imploded into nothingness. "Just like old times," she remarked, a fierce grin transforming her usually stoic features. "You weren't alive for the old times," Issei replied, oving with fluid grace to dispatch another entity. "Perhaps not those old times," she conceded, back to back with him now as they faced the emerging horde. Erd joined them, his ancient sword glowing, with runes that hadn't been activated in centuries. With each swing, abyssal creatures disintegrated, their essence scattered like ash on the wind. For several minutes, the three ancient vampires held their ground, protecting the retreating guards and servants. Issei fought with the practiced precision of millennia, no movement wasted, each strike calculated for maximum effect. Unlike many who relied solely on their supernatural strength, he demonstrated the refined technique of one who had mastered combat through endless centuries of practice. But the rift continued to widen, more creatures pouring through with each passing moment. "We can't contain this indefinitely," Krul observed, her blood chains slicing through three entities simultaneously. "We don't need to," Issei replied, his eyes fixed on the rift itself. "We need to close it." He reached into his coat, withdrawing an ornate dagger with a blade of crystallized dragon's blood, a relic from before his transformation, when the world still knew true dragons. With a precise movement, he slashed his palm, crimson liquid spilling forth with unnatural viscosity. "Cover me," he ordered, then began an incantation in a language so ancient that even Erd and Krul recognized only fragments. As Issei's blood hit the ground, it didn't splatter but flowed with purpose, forming complex geometric patterns that spread outward toward the rift. The symbols glowed with increasing intensity as his chant continued, each word seemingly causing physical pain as he forced them from his throat. Erd and Krul redoubled their efforts, RMING a protective barrier around their king as he worked. The creatures seemed to sense Issei's purpose, their attacks growing more frenzied as they struggled to reach him. "Whatever you're doing," Do it faster, Krul urged, her chains creating a whirlwind of destruction around them. Issei's only response was to increase the tempo of his chant, blood now streaming from his eyes and nose with the strain of channeling such ancient magic. The pattern beneath their feet completed itself, forming a perfect mirror of the rift above, a symmetrical tear pointing downward into the earth. With a final word that seemed to distort the very air around them, Issei thrust both hands upward. The blood pattern launched itself toward the rift, wrapping around its edges like crimson stitches seeking to close a wound. The tear shuddered, contracted, then snapped shut with a thunderclap that shattered every window in the eastern wing of the fortress. The remaining creatures, cut off from their source, all lapsed into puddles of inky liquid that evaporated within seconds. Silence fell across the courtyard, broken only by the moans of injured vampires and the gentle patter of debris falling from damaged structures. Issei swayed slightly, exhaustion briefly visible before he mastered it. Centuries of discipline allowed him to straighten, wiping blood from his face with a handkerchief as if he'd Ely suffered a minor inconvenience rather than channeled world-altering magic. Well, Farid's voice came from above as he observed from a safe distance on the balcony. That was certainly dramatic. Bravo, Your Majesty. Ignoring him, Issei turned to Erd. Secure the wounded. Establish patrols throughout the fortress. Where one rift opened, others may follow. Erd nodded and departed without comment, already calling orders to the regrouping guards. Krul remained, studying Issei with newfound interest. That magic, she said quietly, it wasn't vampire blood magic. No, he agreed, his voice slightly hoarse from the strain of the incantation. It's considerably older. Before she could press further, a commotion near the spot where the rift had closed drew their attention. The air shimmered again, but differently, a gentle ripple rather than a violent tear. With a soft flash of crimson light, a figure stumbled forward as if pushed from behind, collapsing to hands and knees on the courtyard stones. Guards instantly surrounded the newcomer, weapons trained with deadly intent. Issei approached cautiously, Krul at his side, both ready to respond to any threat. The figure raised its head, revealing a young woman with flowing crimson hair and striking blue-green eyes. Her clothing was unlike anything in their world, an elaborate uniform of unfamiliar design with a short skirt and shoulder cape. Most notably, the power that emanated from her was neither human nor vampire, but something else entirely. Where? She gasped, looking around in confusion before her gaze settled on Issei. Her eyes widened in what appeared to be recognition, though he was certain they had never met. Issei, is that you? What's happened to you? The vampire king stiffened, genuine surprise crossing his features for the first time that evening. Few things could truly astonish a being who had lived for millennia, but hearing his name from the lips of this otherworldly stranger accomplished it. Restrain her, he commanded, his voice betraying nothing of his inner turmoil. Carefully, she's not human, nor vampire. As guards moved to comply, the woman's confusion turned to alarm. Wait, I'm Rias Gremory, don't you recognize me? Issei's expression remained impassive, but his mind raced through possibilities. The name meant nothing to him, yet she spoke it as if he should know it intimately. Take her to the Sapphire Chamber, he instructed. Post guards, but treat her as an honored guest, not a prisoner. He turned to Krul. It seems the convergence brings more than monsters through the rifts. You don't know her? Krul asked quietly as the guards escorted the struggling redhead away. No, Issei replied, watching the woman who had spoken his name with such familiarity. But she clearly believes she knows me. And given what we know of dimensional barriers, she may know a version of you from another reality. Krul finished the thought. Issei nodded, his expression thoughtful. The question becomes whether that makes her an ally or a threat. As they returned to the fortress, neither noticed the figure watching from shadows far above, Farid Badori, his Usua. Playful smile replaced by calculating interest. In his hand, he held a small device that pulsed with the same purple-black energy as the rift. Well, he murmured to himself, the game becomes more interesting by the moment. Let's see what other surprises the dimensions have in store for us, shall we? The Sapphire Chamber belied its name. Rather than the expected blue tones, the R.O.'s was decorated in warm crimsons and golds. Comfortable furnishings that would until sapphire inlays in the wood paneling revealed the chamber's designation. What appeared to be windows showing a moonel. Its garden were actually sophisticated projections. The room itself was deep within the fortress, far from any potential escape routes. Rias Gremory paced its confines, her crimson hair flowing behind her like liquid fire. Despite being treated with unexpected courtesy, the guard's refusal to answer her questions had left her frustrated and increasingly concerned. The world beyond her comfortable horizon made no sense, a twisted reflection of the reality she knew. The door opened without warning. Rias turned sharply, power gathering instinctively at her fingertips, a crimson energy distinct from vampire blood magic. Issei entered alone, having changed from his battle-damaged attire into a more formal ensemble of black and crimson that emphasized his regal bearing. He carried a silver tray with an elegant tea service, setting it on the table as if hosting a social call rather than an interrogation. "I thought you might prefer privacy for this conversation," he said, gesturing to a chair. "Please, sit." Rias remained standing, studying him with open wariness. "You're not him," she said finally. "You look like him, but you're not my Issei." "Perceptive," he acknowledged, pouring tea with practiced grace. "And yet you know my name, which few outside my court ever use. Most address me by title alone." "And what title is that?" she asked, curiosity temporarily overcoming caution. "I have accumulated many over the millennia," he replied with a hint of weariness. "Currently, I am King of the Eternal Night, Lord of the Crimson Court, Emperor of the 13 Bloodlines. My subjects typically use Your Majesty, for simplicity's sake." Despite herself, Rias laughed, a brief, surprised sound. "That's considerably more impressive than pawn or boosted gear wielder." Issei's hands stilled momentarily. "Boosted gear," he repeated, the words clearly holding meaning. "The Red Dragon Emperor's gauntlet. You know of it." "Know of it. My Issei wields it," Rias replied, then corrected herself. "The Issei I know. He's my—" She hesitated, a flush coloring her cheeks. "You're what?" Issei prompted, watching her reaction with interest. "My pawn," she said finally. "But also much more. We're engaged to be married." For the briefest moment, genuine surprise flickered across Issei's features before his composure returned. "Fascinating. In your world, I am human then. Or something else." "You were human," Rias confirmed, finally taking the seat he'd offered. The situation was surreal, but her diplomatic training as a devil aristocrat was asserting itself. "Then I reincarnated you as a devil after you were killed by a fallen angel. You're part of my peerage, my household." Issei sipped his tea, processing this information. "A devil," he mused. "How appropriate. The convergence has a sense of irony. It seems. What convergence? Where am I? What happened to—" The questions tumbled out before Rias could stop them. Issei raised a hand, his gesture polite but unmistakably commanding. "One question at a time. You were in Crimson Haven, my fortress and capital of the vampire realm. This world has been under vampire rule for approximately 3 centuries, after a series of catastrophes decimated human civilization." He studied her over the rim of his teacup. "As for how you came to be here, dimensional barriers are collapsing. Rifts are appearing globally, connecting realities that were separated long ago. You fell through such a rift, though yours was unusual. Most have brought only less pleasant visitors." "Demons?" Rias asked, her experience with the supernatural giving her a framework for understanding. "Something older," Issei corrected. "Abyssal entities from the spaces between dimensions. Ancient and hostile to all life." Rias absorbed this, her quick mind making connections. "In my world, there are angels, devils, fallen angels, and various mythological pantheons. Do those exist here?" "They did," Issei replied, something dark passing behind his eyes. "The catastrophes I mentioned affected all supernatural races. Few survived. Those that did keep to themselves, their numbers too depleted to challenge vampire supremacy." He set down his cup with deliberate care. "Now, I have answered your questions. In return, tell me more about your world, specifically, about myself in your reality." Rias hesitated, weighing how much to reveal. This version of Issei radiated ancient power and careful control, utterly unlike the passionate, sometimes impulsive young man she knew. Yet something in his eyes, a certain quality of his attention, reminded her of her Issei when he was truly focused on understanding something important. He, as young, only 18 by human reckoning. Brave to the point of recklessness when protecting those he cares about. A small smile touched her lips, occasionally perverted in typically teenage ways, but with a heart so pure it attracted a divine artifact to him. The boosted gear, Issei murmured. Yes, it contains the spirit of the Red Dragon Emperor, D-Drake. Through it, Issei can double his power repeatedly, though it strains his body. Rias watched his reaction carefully. Does that name mean something to you? For a long moment, Issei was silent, his expression unreadable. Then, with deliberate movements, he removed the glove from his left hand, revealing skin marked with intricate scarlet patterns that pulsed with inner light. D-Drake and I have been acquainted for a very long time, he said quietly. Though our relationship is complicated. Before Rias could respond, alarms blared throughout the fortress. Issei was on his feet instantly, his relaxed demeanor replaced by alert focus. Stay here, he commanded, moving toward the door. Guards will protect you. Wait. Rias stood, gathering her power. Crimson energy crackled around her form, highlighting the determination in her eyes. I'm not helpless. In my world, I'm the next head of House Gremory, one of the 72 pillars of the underworld. If those rift creatures are attacking, I can help. Issei paused, reassessing her with new interest. Perhaps you can, he acknowledged. But remember, this isn't your world, and I am not your Issei. Follow my commands without question if you join us, or I'll have you returned here regardless of your power. She nodded once, her bearing every inch the aristocrat despite her circumstances. Understood. Together they hurried through corridors now filled with organized activity, guards moving to defensive positions, servants securing valuable artifacts, medical teams preparing for casualties. Throughout the controlled chaos, Issei moved with absolute authority, issuing brief commands that were instantly obeyed without question. They reached a command center, where Krul Tepes stood before a wall of monitors displaying various sections of the fortress and surrounding territories. Her pink hair was now pulled back in a practical style, her childlike features set in grim concentration. 3 new rifts, she reported without preamble. Western Courtyard, Northern Tower, and, most concerning, directly in the throne room. Containment status, Issei asked, his tone clipped. Western Courtyard secured, Northern Tower under control, throne room. Krul's expression darkened. We've lost contact with the guard detail. Issei turned to Rias. This is Queen Krul Tepes, 3rd progenitor and ruler of Japan. Krul, this is Rias Gremory, who claims to be a devil aristocrat from another dimension. She's offered assistance. Krul's crimson eyes narrowed as she assessed Rias. Can you fight? In answer, Rias extended her hand, crimson energy condensing into a sphere of pure destructive power. Power of destruction, she said simply. A specialty of House Gremory. Krul's eyebrows rose fractionally, high praise from the typically impassive queen. Impressive. We could use that in the throne room. Our conventional weapons have limited effect against these entities. Issei decided. Krul, coordinate the other containment efforts. Ms. Gremory will accompany me. As they departed, Rias noted how different this version of Issei was in crisis, focused, commanding, utterly in control. Her Issei could be similar during battle, but this ancient vampire king operated on a level of tactical awareness that came only from centuries of warfare. Why the throne room? She asked as they moved swiftly through the fortress. Is there something significant about that location? It sits at the nexus of ley lines I used to strengthen the fortress's foundations, Issei explained. If something deliberately created these rifts, that location would allow them to potentially access the entire network. The implications hung between them as they approached. The massive doors leading to the throne room. 2 guards lay crumpled outside, their bodies desiccated as if centuries had passed in moments. Issei knelt briefly beside the fallen vampires, checking for any sign of life before gently closing their eyelids. Time distortion, he murmured. The abyssal ones are growing stronger. He straightened, crimson energy crackling along his arms as he prepared for battle. Stay behind me initially, he instructed Rias. Observe how they move and attack before engaging. They don't follow conventional physics. With a gesture, the doors swung open. Her one room beyond was transformed, the elegant hall now warped by gravitational distortions. Furniture floated near the ceiling, tapestries rippled as if underwater. At the center, hovering before the crimson throne itself, a rift pulsed with malevolent energy. Unlike the previous tear, this one appeared controlled, its edges stabilized by some unseen force. Before it stood a figure that caused Issei to stiffen in surprise. A tall, elegant man with silver-white hair and aristocratic features studied the rift with scholarly interest. He wore elaborate robes of unfamiliar design, power radiating from him in palpable waves. Fascinating construction, the stranger remarked without turning. Crude, but effective. Whoever created these rifts has considerable knowledge of dimensional mechanics, if limited finesse in application. Identify yourself, Issei commanded, power gathering around him like a crimson shroud. The stranger turned languidly, regarding them with amused condescension. His eyes widened fractionally upon seeing Rias. Well, the crimson-haired ruined princess, far from home. He bowed with mocking formality. Risvam Levon Lucifer, at your service. Though in this reality, I doubt my name carries the same weight. Rias paled visibly. Impossible. You're dead. In your world, perhaps, Risvam shrugged. Here, I've merely been displaced. Like you. His gaze shifted to Issei. Curiosity replacing amusement. How interesting. The Red Dragon Emperor is a vampire king. The convergence creates such delightful variations. You know who I am, Issei stated, studying the self-proclaimed devil. Yet we've never met in this world. Haven't we? Risvim's smile held secrets. Perhaps not in forms we'd recognize. But that's the beauty of the convergence. All possibilities existing simultaneously, all variations of ourselves meeting across the dimensional divide. Without warning, he thrust his hand toward the rift. The tear widened explosively, the controlled opening becoming a chaotic vortex that pulled at the very fabric of the room. Wind howled as air rushed toward the expanding void. Consider this a preview, Risvam called over the growing tempest. All realms will merge soon enough. The old boundaries are failing, and those who established them are long gone. Adapt or perish, your majesty. With a mocking salute, he stepped backward into the rift. Issei lunged forward with impossible speed, but his claws closed on empty air as Risvam vanished into the swirling darkness. The rift, no longer stabilized, began to collapse chaotically. Reality shuddered around them as gravitational forces went haywire. The massive throne tore free from its moorings, hurtling toward Rias with deadly force. Issei moved without thinking, placing himself between her and the projectile. The throne struck him with devastating impact, driving him to his knees as he caught its weight. Bones cracked audibly in his arms before vampire healing began knitting them back together. Close it, he shouted to Rias, strain evident in his voice as he held the throne from crushing them both. Your power of destruction, use it on the rift's edges, not the center. Understanding instantly, Rias channeled her power into precise beams that targeted the perimeter of the rift. The crimson energy seared the tear's boundaries, causing them to contract. With each application, the vortex's pull diminished. Issei shifted the throne aside with a final surge of strength, then joined her effort. His blood magic manifested differently, geometric patterns that imposed order on the chaotic tear, forcing it to conform to natural laws once more. Together, their powers complemented each other perfectly, her destruction breaking down the unnatural construct, his blood magic restructuring reality in its place. With a final concussive blast that knocked them both backward, the rift sealed itself. Silence fell across the devastated throne room. Dust motes drift in shafts of moonlight from shattered windows. The crimson throne lay toppled and cracked beside them. Issei recovered first, rising with fluid grace despite his recent injuries. He extended a hand to Rias, helping her to her feet with courtly manners that seemed incongruous amidst the destruction. You handled yourself well, he acknowledged, genuine respect in his tone. Few could have adapted so quickly to fighting dimensional anomalies. I've had practice with unexpected situations, she replied, brushing debris from her uniform. Though usually not quite so existentially threatening. Guards burst into the throne room, weapons ready, led by a concerned-looking Krul Tepes. She surveyed the destruction with a critical eye before focusing on Issei. The other rifts have closed, she reported. Casualties minimal. What happened here? We had a visitor, Issei replied, his expression grave. One who knows far too much about these rifts. He turned to Rias. You recognized him. It wasn't a question, but she nodded confirmation. Rizvam Lavan Lucifer. In my world, he was one of the leaders of the old Satan faction, immensely powerful, utterly amoral, and obsessed with chaos for its own sake. He should be dead. Clearly, dimensional barriers work differently for some beings, Issei mused. His presence changes matters considerably. Krul's expression sharpened with sudden suspicion. You think he's responsible for the rifts? Not directly, Issei replied, moving to examine the spot where the rift had closed. He seemed surprised by their construction. But he knows more than he revealed. He straightened. Decision made. Convene the council immediately, and prepare guest quarters for Ms. Gremory. Proper accommodations, not a glorified cell. He turned to Rias, studying her with new intensity. It seems you've been brought to our world for a reason. Perhaps the convergence itself has a purpose beyond random chaos. What convergence? Krul asked sharply. You've used that term before, but never explained it. Issei's gaze remained on Rias as he answered. The prophecy of when all realms would reunite, when the barriers between dimensions would fall, bringing together all variations of existence. His expression betrayed nothing of his inner thoughts. If it's truly beginning, we'll need allies from every possible reality. Including devils? Rias asked, meeting his gaze steadily. Including devils, he confirmed. Especially ones with intimate knowledge of our enemies. As they left the ruined throne room, none of them noticed the small device embedded in the wall near where the rift had closed, a mechanical construct pulsing with faint purple energy, recording everything that had transpired. In deep beneath Crimson Haven, fair. Idbatori watched the footage with rapt attention, particularly the interaction between Issei and the devil woman. His lips curved into a satisfied smile as he added notes to an ancient journal filled with observations spanning centuries. Perfect, he murmured, closing the journal with a decisive snap. All the players are assembling for the final act. And this time, dear king, I won't be relegated to a minor role. He lifted a vial containing swirling crimson liquid mixed with flecks of purple-black energy, blood taken from a fallen abyssal entity, combined with something far more dangerous. The convergence comes, Farid whispered to the empty room, and with it, the truth you've hidden for millennia. Let's see how long your carefully constructed reign survives when your subjects learn what you really are. The vial pulsed with malevolent light, casting Farid's gleeful expression in sinister relief as beyond the fortress walls, new rifts began to form across the horizon. Chapter 1 End Chapter 2, Crimson Diplomacy. Dawn never came to the eternal night. Instead, the fortress of Crimson Haven marked time's passage through ancient hourglasses filled with luminescent vampire ood that glowed brighter or dimmer to simulate the rhythm of days long forgotten by most inhabitants. In the highest tower, within chambers reserved for honored guests rather than prisoners, Rias Ori watched the blood light shift to indicate morning's arrival. Sleep had eluded her. The silken sheets and canopied bed offered luxurious comfort, yet her mind raced with implications of everything she'd witnessed. Dimensional rifts, abyssal entities, a version of Issei so ancient and powerful he ruled vampire kind with unquestioned authority. And most disturbing, Rizvam Lavan Lucifer alive and clearly orchestrating chaos across realities. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. Without waiting for response, the door opened to reveal a slender female vampire with azure hair styled in an elaborate braid. She wore a practical uniform of charcoal and crimson, the insignia on her collar marking her as part of the royal household. Lady Gremory, she announced, her voice melodic yet clipped. His Majesty requests your presence at the diplomatic assembly in 1 hour. I've been instructed to provide suitable attire and any assistance you require. Rias straightened, diplomatic training asserting itself. Thank you. I don't believe I caught your name. The vampire blinked, clearly unaccustomed to such courtesy from outsiders. Lilia Kretsnot, third handmaiden to His Eternal Majesty. She gestured to an adjoining bathing chamber. Refreshments and bathing facilities have been prepared. Would you prefer to select your attire before or after? After would be fine, Rias replied, noting how the vampire maintained precise distance, close enough for service, far enough to react if attacked. Even in these domestic interactions, the predatory caution of vampire kind remained evident. The bathing chamber proved surprisingly modern despite the fortress's medieval exterior. Steaming water filled a sunken marble bath, the surface scattered with crimson petals that released a subtle fragrance. Not roses as she initially thought, but something more exotic with notes of cinnamon and blood orange. Nearby, a tray held various oils, soaps, and crystal decanters containing liquid. Rias decided not to investigate too closely. As she bathed, Rias contemplated strategy. In her world, as heiress to House Gremory, she'd been trained in supernatural diplomacy since childhood. Yet, nothing had prepared her for negotiating with an alternate reality's vampire hierarchy, especially one ruled by a version of her fiancé. When she emerged, Lilia had arranged several outfits on the bed. Unlike the servant's stiff formality earlier, curiosity now animated her features. "Is it true?" Lilia asked abruptly. "You're from a world where His Majesty is different." Rias nodded, examining the clothing options. All elegant and clearly expensive, though styled with vampire sensibilities. High collars, dramatic silhouettes, predominantly dark colors with strategic crimson accents. "Very different," she confirmed. Selecting a midnight blue gown with subtle crimson embroidery, formal enough for diplomacy while acknowledging vampire aesthetic without fully embracing it. "In my world, Issei is young. Human, originally. Now a devil in my service." Lilia's eyes widened. "His Majesty, serving another. Impossible to imagine." "Perhaps not so impossible," came a melodic voice from the doorway. Krul Tepes entered without ceremony, her diminutive form somehow dominating the space despite her childlike appearance. Unlike yesterday's battle attire, she now wore an elaborate gown of black silk and blood-red gems that caught light with every movement. "Our king wasn't always king, after all." Lilia immediately bowed low. "Your Majesty, forgive my impertinence. Leave us," Krul commanded without heat. As the servant hastily retreated, Krul's crimson gaze assessed Rias with clinical precision. "Good choice." She nodded toward the selected gown. "Diplomatic without capitulation. You've done this before." "I was raised to eventually lead my house," Rias replied carefully. "Diplomacy is essential when devils, angels, and various pantheons must coexist." "And what exactly are devils in your world?" Krul circled Rias with predatory grace. "Here, they were little more than particularly clever demons, dangerous but disorganized. They didn't survive the cataclysm well." Rias maintained composure under scrutiny. "In my reality, devils are an advanced civilization with a complex social hierarchy. The underworld is divided among 72 noble houses, the pillars, each with territories, specialized abilities, and political influence. We have a democratic government now, though older noble houses like mine still hold significant power." Krul's lips curved in a slight smile. "How absolutely civilized. And where does Issei Hyodo fit into this elegant arrangement?" The question carried weight beyond simple curiosity. Rias recognized the underlying assessment. Krul was evaluating potential threats, gauging Rias's relationship with her world's Issei as possible leverage. "He was human when we met," Rias answered truthfully but selectively. "After certain events, I reincarnated him as my devil servant using a system called evil pieces, similar to chess pieces, each granting different abilities. He became my pawn. The weakest piece," Krul noted with raised eyebrow. "The piece with the greatest potential," Rias corrected. "In enemy territory, a pawn can promote to any other piece. Issei has proven his value countless times." Something shifted in Krul's expression. Reassessment, perhaps even respect. "Interesting. Our Issei has never spoken of his origins, not even to those of us who've known him for centuries. Some believe he was never human at all." This revelation surprised Rias. Her Issei was an open book, his emotions transparent, his past well documented. The idea of an Issei shrouded in millennia of secrecy felt fundamentally wrong. "What do you believe?" she asked. Krul's smile turned enigmatic. "I believe we should join the diplomatic assembly before Farid Batory convinces the council that devils are planning to invade our realm." She gestured to the gown. "I'll send Lilia back to assist you. The politics of our court are particular. Best not to navigate them alone your first day." As Krul departed, Rias was left with the distant court impression that the vampire queen had accomplished exactly what she'd intended, extracting information while revealing almost nothing in return. Diplomatic indeed. The council chamber differed markedly from the ruby chamber where the progenitors had met. While that space emphasized blood and power, this hall was designed for diplomatic neutrality, circular with 13 equidistant alcoves along the perimeter, each containing a different style of seating appropriate to various supernatural deletured and intricate mosaic depicting creatures from vampire mythology, surrounded by text in a language Rias didn't recognize. 8 alcoves contained vampire nobles representing different territories and bloodlines. The remaining 5 stood empty, those servants arranged one with comfortable seating more suited to human physiology than vampire preference. A subtle message about expected alliances, Rias noted. Issei Hyodo occupied no alcove. Instead, he stood at the chamber's center upon a raised dais. The perfect embodiment of the vampire sovereign. His attire combined ancient and modern elements, a tailored jacket of deepest crimson over traditional black vestments adorned with Elver emblems representing vampire bloodlines. His hair, tied back with a simple silver cord, emphasized aristocratic features that appeared carved from marble. Lady Gremory, he acknowledged as she entered with Lilia. I trust your accommodations proved satisfactory. Quite comfortable, Your Majesty, she replied, adopting court formalities instinctively. Though I confess unfamiliarity with your custom of blood hourglasses rather than sunlight to mark time's passage. A ripple of amusement passed through several vampires. From one alcove, Farid Badori commented with theatrical delight, she expected windows. How charmingly primitive. Sunlight remains problematic for many bloodlines, Issei explained, ignoring Farid's interruption. Though some of us have evolved beyond such weaknesses, tradition maintains darkness for comfort of all. The hourglasses are calibrated to atomic precision, more accurate than the sun, in fact. He gestured toward the prepared alcove. Please, join us. Today's assembly addresses recent dimensional incursions and appropriate responses. As Rias took her place, she noted the strategic positioning. Her alcove stood between Krul Tepes and an empty section, directly across from Farid Badori, placing her where most council members could observe her reactions while she could only easily see a few participants. Another subtle power play. Issei raised his hand, and immediate silence fell. Progenitors, noble representatives, honored guest, we face unprecedented circumstances. Dimensional barriers separating realities have begun failing. Through resulting rifts come both abyssal entities hostile to all life, and visitors from parallel worlds. His gaze briefly met Rias's. Lady Gremory represents one such world, a reality where supernatural hierarchies develop differently than our own. Her testimony suggests these dimensional anomalies affect multiple realities simultaneously. Giles, the stoic second progenitor, spoke from his alcove. What benefit does her testimony provide? She is one random traveler from countless possible worlds. Not random, Issei corrected. In her reality, an alternative version of myself exists, Su. Jesting our worlds are closely connected variants rather than distant parallels. More importantly, she recognized our other visitor, the self-proclaimed devil Rizvam Levon Lucifer. Murmurs spread through the chamber. Farid leaned forward, his perpetual smile sharpening with interest. A devil who knows our king in another life. How fascinating. One wonders what other connections exist between worlds. Perhaps we all have counterparts walking different paths. Speculation serves little purpose, Krul interjected sharply. The practical concern remains. These rifts threaten our territories and subjects. 3 noble residences reported incursions overnight. 2 were successfully contained. 1 resulted in complete loss of the household. Issei nodded. Which brings us to our response. Lord Giles, report on containment efforts. Quote, stood, his military bearing evident as he addressed the council. Standard weapons prove ineffective against abyssal entities. Only blood magic of progen. Atur level or specialized artifacts show consistent results. I've distributed what ancient weapons remain in our armories, but supplies are limited. My scientists have developed a detection system, Krul added. Early warning for rift formation. We're installing networks throughout Japan and sending specifications to other territories. Lest Kar, the diminutive 4th progenitor, scoffed audibly. Technology. How modern of you, Krul. Some might question whether traditional methods have been fully explored. Traditional methods failed to predict or prevent any incursions, Krul replied coolly. Unless you've managed otherwise in your territory. Before Lest could retort, the chamber doors opened. A vampire messenger hurried to Issei, whispering urgently in his ear. The king's expression remained impassive, but something dangerous flickered behind his eyes. It seems we have another unexpected visitor, he announced. Not from dimensional rifts, but rather closer to home. The human resistance has requested parley. Shock rippled through the council. Farid laughed delightedly. Livestock requesting formal audience. What unprecedented times indeed. The humans have observed the rifts as well, Issei continued. Ignoring the outburst, they propose temporary cooperation against common threats. Absurd, Lest declared. Humans are resources, not allies. Resources rapid. DLY depleting through your mismanagement, Krul countered. Japan's sustainable blood harvest protocols have prevented exactly this type of desperation. Rias observed the political undercurrents with growing understanding. Vampire society clearly divided between traditionalists who viewed humans as cattle and progressives who recognized the practical benefits of more sustainable approaches. Issei's position seemed moderate, maintaining vampire supremacy while implementing protections that prevented human extinction. The human emissary awaits our decision, Issei stated. I propose we hear T.'s proposal before dismissing potential allies against abyssal incursions. And what of our devil visitor? Farid inquired with exaggerated courtesy. Surely her perspective on human supernatural cooperation would prove illuminating. All eyes turned to Rias. She recognized the opportunity and challenge presented. Her response would establish her position in this complex political landscape. In my world, she began carefully. Devils and humans maintain complex relationships. Some humans become devils voluntarily through various pacts. Others serve or are protected by devil houses. Sustainable coexistence benefits both species. You would have us make pacts with cattle? Lest asked incredulously. I merely describe my reality, not prescribe for yours, Rias replied diplomatically. Though I note even human history demonstrates that enemies often ally against greater threats, regardless of ongoing disputes. Issei's expression revealed nothing, but Rias sensed approval in his slight nod. Well stated, Lady Gremory. The pragmatic approach has merit. He turned to the council. I will meet with the human emissary. Queen Tepes, Lord Giles, Lady Gremory, join me as witnesses. The remaining council will continue discussing containment protocols. As they exited, Rias noticed Farid watching her with calculated interest. Unlike the other vampires' open hostility or cautious neutrality, his expression suggested he considered her arrival fortuitous rather than threatening. That, more than anything, raised her guard. The diplomatic reception hall presented a stark contrast to vampire aesthetics elsewhere in the fortress. Designed specifically for meetings with non-vampire entities, it featured neutral tones, conventional furniture, and artificial lighting that simulated gentle daylight, all carefully calibrated to put visitors at ease while maintaining vampire comfort. Psychological warfare through interior design, Krul murmured as they entered. Hiragi won't miss the implications. Hiragi, Rias asked quietly. The human resistance's ruling family, Krul explained. Former exorcists who developed weapons effective against our kind. They've led opposition for generations. Before further explanation, massive doors opened. 4 humans entered, 3 obvious guards flanking a petite young woman who couldn't have been more than 16 by appearance. Despite her youth and small stature, she carried herself with absolute confidence. Her lavender hair was pulled into twin tails adorned with white ribbons that contrasted sharply with her black uniform. Most notably, she bore a massive scythe across her shoulders with casual ease, its blade inscribed with symbols that made Rias's devil senses prickle uncomfortably. Shinoa Hiragi, Issei acknowledged without rising from his seat. The battlefield suits you better than diplomatic halls. The girl smiled, a sharp, predatory expression at odds with her innocent appearance. And you look uncomfortably constrained without blood splattered across that pretty face, Vampire King. Her voice carried surprising maturity, laced with cutting sarcasm. But desperate times force uncomfortable arrangements, don't they? Indeed. Issei gestured to seats prepared across the table. You requested parley regarding the dimensional anomalies. I assume you've encountered the entities emerging from rifts. Shinoa sat without ceremony, propping her scythe against her chair with deliberate casualness. Her guards remained standing, tension evident in their vigilant postures. 3 settlements lost completely, she confirmed. All sarcasm vanishing from her tone. No survivors. The creatures ignore curse gear entirely. Only my black demon weapon affected them, and even then. She gestured to bandages visible beneath her sleeve. They don't die easily. They cannot truly die here, Issei stated. They exist primarily in dimensions beyond ours. When seemingly destroyed, they merely lose their anchor to our reality. Shinoa's eyes narrowed. You know these things. Why am I not surprised? More secrets from the Immortal King. Not secrets. Ancient knowledge few had reason to preserve. Issei's tone remained neutral despite the accusation. The last incursion occurred nearly 8 centuries ago. Human records from that period were largely lost during subsequent wars and plagues. Convenient, Shinoa remarked dryly. So what are they? Why now? And why should we believe anything you tell us? Krul leaned forward, her childlike appearance contrasting with authoritative presence. Because we're dying too, human. 3 vampire noble houses destroyed yesterday. These entities consume all life indiscriminately. Shinoa's gaze shifted to Krul, then to Rias, assessing each with tactical precision. And who might you be? Not vampire, clearly. Another secret weapon from the king's endless arsenal. Rias Gremory, she introduced herself, recognizing an opportunity to establish diplomatic connections. I arrived through one of the rifts from a parallel reality. In my world, different supernatural factions, including devils like myself, maintain cooperative agreements with humanity. Interest flickered across Shinoa's features before cynicism reasserted itself. How wonderfully convenient. A pretty stranger appears with tales of harmonious coexistence just when the vampire king needs human cooperation. Your skepticism is understandable, Issei acknowledged, surprising Rias with his reasonable tone. But easily verified. Lady Gremory possesses abilities unknown in our world. Demonstrate, if you would. Rias extended her hand, allowing her power of destruction to manifest as a small crimson sphere. The energy pulsed with controlled potential that even humans sense, fundamentally different from vampire blood magic. Shinoa's guards tensed visibly, but she remained outwardly unimpressed. Different power, same problem. These rifts threaten everyone, yet we're supposed to trust creatures who've spent centuries treating humans as walking blood banks. Trust is irrelevant, Issei stated plainly. Mutual survival is the only consideration. You've confer. Med standard curse gear proves ineffective against abyssal entities. We possess knowledge and artifacts specifically designed for containing dimensional threats. At what price? Shinoa challenged. Temporary ceasefire. Issei replied without hesitation. Your forces focus exclusively on rift entities. Ours do the same. Blood quotas remain in effect but strictly enforced against violators. When the threat ends, we return to previous arrangements. Shinoa laughed, a sharp, disbelieving sound. Previous arrangements? You mean where you monsters drain children while pretending your sustainable harvesting is somehow merciful? Rias observed Issei carefully, expecting anger at the human's insolence. Instead, something like weary understanding crossed his features momentarily. The alternative was extinction, he said quietly. Before the quotas, before my rule, vampires drained entire villages without thought for tomorrow. Humanity teetered on collapse. The current system preserves both species. Your benevolence overwhelms me, Shinoa replied sarcastically, though something in her expression suggested the argument wasn't entirely unfamiliar. This was clearly an old debate bet. Wean long-term adversaries rather than new diplomatic territory. Krul interjected impatiently, we waste time on philosophical disputes while rifts continue spreading. Do you accept the temporary alliance or not, human? Shinoa tapped her fingers against her scythe, the gesture seemingly casual though Rias noted it activated subtle symbols along the blade. I have conditions. First, any vampire violating the ceasefire forfeits all protection, we destroy them without repercussion. Second, humans injured fighting rift entities receive medical care regardless of territory. Third, you share all information about these creatures and the rifts, no convenient secrets kept for vampire advantage. Acceptable, Issei agreed immediately, causing surprise among all present. With reciprocal terms, your forces share all observations about rift activities in human territories. Any weapons effective against abyssal entities are documented and techniques shared. And all curse gear specifically Daisy. GNED for vampire destruction is temporarily deactivated except those belonging to squad leaders like yourself. A tense silence followed as Shinoa weighed the proposal. Finally, she nodded sharply. Agreed. Though I maintain healthy skepticism about vampire promises. As we maintain similar reservations about human honor, Issei replied evenly. Yet necessity creates strange alliances. Your 4. CES will receive communication devices calibrated to our warning network. When rifts appear, closest response teams engage regardless of species. As details were finalized, Rias observed the complex dynamic between Issei and Shinoa. Despite open hostility, undercurrents suggested reluctant respect, two leaders pragmatic enough to set aside ancient enmity when faced with existential threats. More interesting was how Issei treated the human as an equal negotiator despite vast power differentials, suggesting principles beyond typical vampire arrogance. When formal terms were recorded and sealed, with both vampire blood magic and whatever power Shinoa channeled through her scythe, the human rose to depart. This changes nothing fundamental, she stated firmly. When these rifts are contained, we return to our war. Of course, Issei agreed with unexpected sincerity. I would expect nothing less from the Hiragi heir. Something unreadable passed between them, a moment of genuine understanding between immortal predator and human resistance leader that transcended their formal enmity. Then Shinoa's sarcastic mask returned as she shouldered her scythe. Try not to get consumed by dimensional horrors before I get the chance to separate that pretty head from your shoulders, Vampire King. With that parting remark, she departed with her guards, leaving momentary silence in her wake. Charming girl, Krul remarked dryly. Her sister was less abrasive. Her sister didn't watch her family systematically eliminated, Issei replied, rising from his seat. Shinoa Hiragi has early. That she's pragmatic enough to set it aside temporarily speaks to her quality as a leader. Rias considered this assessment. Her Issei sometimes displayed similar empathy for enemies, though rarely with such detached analysis. This version possessed a deeper understanding of human motivation, likely born from centuries observing humanity's cycles of violence and reconciliation. You speak as if you respect her, Rias observed. I respect effective opponents, Issei confirmed, gathering documents from the table. The Hiragi have survived 3 centuries against overwhelming odds through adaptability and sheer determination. Admirable qualities, regardless of species. Before further discussion could develop, the fortress alarms activated, not the urgent battle signals from yesterday's incursion, but a measured pattern indicating incoming information rather than immediate threat. Detection network, Krul explained, already moving toward the door. Likely another rift forming. They proceeded swiftly to the command center where vampires monitored various displays showing territories surrounding Crimson Haven. One screen flashed warning indicators over a location several mi less from the fortress, a remote area marked as uninhabited wilderness. Unusual energy signature, reported a technician. Distinct from previous rifts, more controlled formation, similar to the throne room anomaly rather than random tiers. Quote, someone creating it deliberately, Issei concluded. Prepare response teams but maintain distance initially. Observation priority. As preparations proceeded with military efficiency, Farid Badori entered the command center, his expression betraying unusual seriousness beneath his typical affected nonchalance. You'll want to see this immediately, he announced, bypassing normal protocols to hand Issei an ancient leather-bound volume, found in the restricted archives during containment preparations. Note the prophecy on page 93 and the accompanying illustration. Issei accepted the book with visible surprise at Farid's uncharacteristic directness. Opening to the indicated page, his expression shifted subtly as he read, a tightening around the eyes that suggested significant discovery. Verify this, he commanded, handing the volume to Krul. As she examined the text, Rias moved to glimpse the pages. The language was unfamiliar, older than any she'd encountered in Devil archives, but the illustration proved universally comprehensible. 13 spheres representing different realms arranged in a complex pattern, with a central crimson sphere connecting to all others. Most disturbing were shadowy tendrils depicted emerging from spaces between spheres, reaching toward the central connection point. The prophecy of convergence, Krul murmured. recognition dawning in her expression. I thought it merely allegorical. What prophecy? Rias asked, diplomatic caution temporarily forgotten in the face of potential answers. Issei's gaze remained fixed on monitoring screens showing the developing rift as he explained. An ancient prediction that 13 realms, once united, would eventually reconverge after long separation. The prophecy claims barriers between dimensions were artificially created to prevent some greater catastrophe, but destined to eventually fail. By design or entropy? Krul questioned, studying the text more closely. The prophecy is deliberately vague, Ferret interjected, his usual playfulness returning. As all good doomsday predictions should be. Specific enough to recognize when occurring. Ambiguous enough to interpret favorably regardless of outcome. Issei shot him a sharp glance. Where exactly did you find this volume, Lord Batory? It should have been sealed in my private collection. Something dangerous flickered in Ferret's smile. Perhaps your library cataloging needs review, Your Majesty. It was merely sitting forgotten on a secondary shelf. Fortunate I happened upon it, given current circumstances. The tension between them crackled with unspoken history and suspicion, but before confrontation could develop, the monitoring technician interrupted. Rift stabilizing, my lord. Energy signature crystallizing into consistent pattern. All attention returned to displays showing the wilderness location where purple-black energy coalesced into a perfectly circular portal rather than jagged tear. Unlike previous chaotic rifts, this opening maintained stable parameters, its edges precisely defined. That's not forming naturally, Krul observed. Someone's controlling it from the other side. Incoming transition detected, the technician reported. Single entity emerging. The cameras focused on the portal as a figure stepped through with casual confidence. Tall and elegant with flowing white hair, he wore ornate armor of unfamiliar design over formal attire that marked him as nobility of some kind. Most notably, 12 wings extended from his back, not feathered like angel wings but composed of energy that shifted between shades of deepest black and brilliant white. Valley Lucifer, Rias breathed, recognizing the figure immediately despite differences from her world's version. Issei's head turned sharply. You know him as well. In my world, he's the White Dragon Emperor, wielder of divine dividing and descendant of the original Lucifer. Her brow furrowed in confusion. But this version seems different. More powerful. On screen, Valley surveyed his surroundings with calm assessment before looking directly toward the hidden camera. ASM. Il touched his lips as he spoke clearly, evidently aware of surveillance. Issei Hyodo, he addressed the camera. Or should I say, Crimson Emperor. Your reputation extends across dimensions. Me seeking audience regarding mutual concerns. The convergence approaches faster than anticipated, and certain entities have already begun positioning themselves advantageously. He gestured casually, and the portal behind him closed with precision that demonstrated remarkable control over dimensional mechanics. I'll await your response here. Do hurry. Time grows short in all realities. The TRAN's mission ended as Valley settled comfortably against a boulder, his posture suggesting complete confidence despite being in potentially hostile territory. Silence held momentarily in the command center before Issei spoke. Prepare my transport. Krul, Rias, you'll accompany me. Lord Batory, continue researching the convergence prophecy. Full council briefing upon our return. As they departed, As noticed Ferret's expression, a carefully controlled mask of subservience that failed to conceal calculating intelligence behind his eyes. When he believed no one watching, his gaze returned to the Nitor showing Valley with intense interest that bordered on recognition. More connections between worlds, Rias realized. More players entering the complex game of dimensional politics. The question remained whether they came as allies against abyssal threats or opportunists seeking advantage in cosmic upheaval. The journey to Valley's location took mere minutes via vampire transportation, a network of ancient magic circles connecting territories under Issei's control. They emerged in dense forest untouched by civilization for centuries, primeval trees towering overhead like silent sentinels. Valley hadn't moved from his position, though his wings had vanished, leaving him appearing more conventionally humanoid. He straightened as they approached, offering a formal bow that somehow conveyed respect without subservience. The legendary vampire king, he greeted Issei. Though that title hardly encompasses your true nature, does it? Issei's expression revealed nothing as he studied the newcomer. You claim knowledge of me across dimensions. Explain yourself. Direct as ever, Valley smiled. Some traits remain consistent regardless of reality. His gaze shifted to Rias, recognition evident. Gremory, unexpected to find you here, though the dimensional barriers always were thinnest between closely related variants. You know mutuously. A version of you, Valley clarified. Huff that Rias Gremory never experienced displacement between realms. Interesting divergence point. Krul stepped forward, patience visibly thinning. Fascinating interdimensional reunion, but P.S. address why you've engineered a stable portal into our territory. Technology beyond anything we've observed from Rift entities. Because I'm not a Rift entity, Valley replied simply. I'm a traveler with purpose, specifically preventing catastrophic dimensional collapse that threatens all realities simultaneously. He reached into his coat, causing both Issei and Krul to tense in preparation for potential attack. Instead, Valley withdrew a small crystal pyramid that projected a holographic display showing multiple intersecting planes of existence. The dimensional barriers separating ties were created by primordial beings whom most worlds mythologize as gods, he explained. Their purpose wasn't segregation but containment, specifically, imprisoning entities that existed before conventional reality formed. The hologram shifted to display shadowy tendrils similar to those in the prophecy illustration, but with disturbing detail that the ancient drawing had mercifully obscured. These appendages belong to something vast and incomprehensible, its form suggesting geometries impossible in three-dimensional space. The abyssal hierarchy, Valley continued. Beings that perceive our reality as we might view a petri dish, with clinical interest in some cases, complete indifference in others. The barriers prevented them from accessing multiple dimensions simultaneously, limiting their influence. These entities created the rifts? Issei questioned, studying the hologram intently. No, Valley's expression darkened. Someone is deliberately destabilizing barriers from within our realms. The abyssal ones merely exploit weaknesses created. They're opportunists rather than architects. Rias concluded. In my world, he pursued forbidden knowledge about primordial beings. If his counterpart here has similar interests. Precisely, Valley nodded. Though he's merely one player among many. Multiple factions across realities recognize the convergence as upward. Unity rather than catastrophe, a chance to reshape existence according to their designs when barriers fall completely. Issei's expression remained carefully neutral, though Rias noted subtle tension in his posture. You've presented problems admirably. What solutions do you offer? Alliance, Valley replied without hesitation. I represent a coalition of beings from 7 realms already affected by barrier degradation. We possess knowledge and artifacts capable of reinforcing dimensional boundaries temporarily while addressing root causes. Which are? Krul pressed. Primarily, destabilizer. Qian devices planted at key nexus points between dimensions. Valley manipulated the hologram to display mechanical constructs emitting purple-black energy. Technological adaptation of ancient magic, assigned to resonate at frequencies that weaken specific barrier harmonics. Issei studied the devices with growing recognition. Similar technology to what sealed the rift in my throne room yesterday. Identical in fundamental design, Valley confirmed. Someone in your world has obtained interdimensional technology, likely through previous small-scale breaches before the current crisis accelerated. The implications hung heavily between them. Someone within vampire society possessed advanced knowledge of dimensional mechanics and actively participated in barrier destabilization. The list of suspects with necessary access, intelligence and motivation was vanishingly small. What does your coalition propose specifically? Issei asked, moving past unspoken suspicions to practical matters. Joint operations to locate and neutralize destabilization devices, Valley answered. Exchange of information regarding rift activities across connected realms. Development of more permanent solutions once immediate crisis is contained. And your personal interest in this matter? Issei's question carried subtle challenge. Altruism seems unlikely motivation for interdimensional intervention. Valley smiled. A genuine expression that transformed his aristocratic features into something almost approachable. In every reality where we exist simultaneously, Issei Hyodo, Our paths intertwine as rivals, enemies, or reluctant allies. Some cosmic joke perhaps, the red and white connected across all possible worlds. He gestured to his chest where, Rias now noticed, a faint glow emanated beneath his armor. I contain the essence of Albion, the White Dragon Emperor. In many realities, you harbor Didrag, the Red Dragon Emperor. Our powers complement and oppose each other in perfect cosmic balance. Not in this reality, Issei stated flatly. My connection to dragons lies elsewhere. Something like disappointment flickered across Valley's features. Different paths, perhaps, but connected nonetheless. The Convergence prophecy names the Crimson Emperor as nexus point between realms, the one being whose existence spans sufficient dimensional variance to potentially stabilize or destroy cosmic architecture during reconnection. Silence fell as implications settled. Rias watched Issei carefully, noting how this revelation seemed to confirm something he already suspected rather than providing entirely new information. Your coalition, Issei finally spoke. Who leads it? No single entity, Valley replied. Representatives from affected realms form a council. Some names you HT recognize across dimensional variants: Michael of the Seraph, Searsex Lucifer, Yusaka of the Yokai, Odin of Asgard. Searsex, Rias interrupted, shock overriding diplomacy. My brother exists in your reality too. Valley's gaze sharpened with interest. Your brother leads devil kind in multiple realities, though in some he falls to darkness rather than light. The dimensional variants create fascinating permutations of familiar souls. Before further discussion could develop, Krul's communication device activated with urgent signal. Multiple rift formations detected, came a tense report. Coordinated pattern suggesting deliberate attack rather than random incursion. Crimson Haven defenses engaging, were needed elsewhere, Issei stated, already turning toward the transport circle. You've given us much to consider. Valley Lucifer. Whether alliance proves beneficial remains to be determined. Consider quickly, Valley advised, making no move to follow them. Dimensional barrier. Weaken exponentially once degradation reaches critical threshold. We approach that point rapidly across all connected realms. As they prepared for immediate return to the fortress, Valley added one final warning. The prophecy speaks truth, Crimson Emperor. When barriers fail completely, only the one who exists across all dimensions can determine whether realities merge harmoniously or destroy each other through incompatible metaphysics. The transport circle activated, magical energy enveloping them in crimson light. The last thing Rias saw was Valley reopening his perfectly controlled porta. And stepping through, not fleeing danger but continuing his interdimensional mission with methodical purpose. Chaos greeted their return to Crimson Haven. Alarms blared throughout the fortress as guards rushed to defensive positions. Multiple monitors in the command center displayed rifts forming in perfect hexagonal patterns surrounding the citadel, 6 tiers opening simultaneously with precision suggesting coordinated attack rather than natural phenomenon. Containment status, Issei demanded, immediately assuming command. Northern and eastern rifts temporarily sealed, reported the vampire coordinator. Western breach expanding beyond containment capacity. Southern approach compromised. Human resistance forces engaged but sustaining heavy casualties. 2 remaining rifts still forming. Deliberate attack pattern, Krul observed grimly. They're testing defenses, looking for aiding distractions, Rias suggested, studying the tactical display. The pattern draws defenders to pay. Remayer while leaving Central Fortress potentially vulnerable. Issei's expression sharpened with appreciation for her tactical insight. Check internal security protocols. Full sweep for unauthorized access or anomalous energy signatures within central chambers. As commands were relayed, the Western monitoring feed showed disturbing development, abyssal entities emerging through the expanding IFT had evolved beyond amorphous shadows into more defined forms. These creatures moved with tactical coordination rather than feral aggression, targeting defensive installations with apparent intelligence. They're adapting, Krul noted with growing concern. Learning from each incursion, or being directed, Issei countered. Coordinate with human resistance through emergency channels. Combin. Response teams to Western breach immediately. As the situation developed, Rias observed Issei's command style, calm efficiency rather than dramatic authority. Unlike many leaders who demanded attention through force of personality, He directed crisis response with minimum wasted movement or speech. Each instruction precisely calculated for maximum effect, each decision balanced between immediate tactical necessity and longer strategic considerations. Lady Gremory, he addressed her without turning from the monitors. Your power of destruction proved effective against these entities previously. Would you accompany response teams to the Western Breach? The request rather than command revealed his understanding of diplomatic nuance, acknowledging her status as foreign dignitary rather than subject while simultaneously offering opportunity to demonstrate value as potential ally. Of course, she agreed immediately. Though I should note my powers function differently in combat than the demonstration you witnessed. The effect can be substantially more destructive at full capacity. Excellent, he nodded, finally turning to meet her gaze. Krul will coordinate from command center. Farid Batori was dispatched to southern approach before our return, unusual initiative on his part. Something in his tone suggested suspicion regarding Farid's convenient absence during Valley's revelations about dimensional technology, but circumstances allowed no time to address such concerns. A vampire lieutenant approached with combat gear, not typical vampire battle attire but equipment. Specifically designed for rift defense, including crystalline components that resonated at frequencies disruptive to interdimensional entities. The red activation triggers dimensional anchoring, the lieutenant explained. Demonstrating the mechanism creates localized stability field that prevents entities from phase shifting to avoid conventional attacks. As Rias accepted the equipment, arms shifted tone indicating new development. A technician called out urgently, internal anomaly detected. Energy signature in restricted archives, fluctuation pattern consistent with dimensional tier forming inside the fortress. The distraction theory proves correct, Issei remarked with grim satisfaction rather than alarm. Krul, maintain perimeter defense coordination. Lady Gremory, change O.F. assignment. Accompany me to internal breach. They moved swiftly through fortress corridors now eerily emptied as defenders focused on external threats. Rias noted how Issei navigated the labyrinthine passageways without hesitation, occasionally using vampire speed that would have left her behind had she not activated devil wings to match his pace. The restricted archives occupied subterranean levels beneath the central keep, vast chambers filled with knowledge accumulated across millennia. Unlike modern libraries with systematic organization, these archives reflected their ancient origins. Hero eclectic arrangement. Scrolls from forgotten civilizations alongside grimoires bound in materials Rias preferred not to identify, technological artifacts of inexplicable purpose interspersed with conventional historical records. They found no guards at the entrance, all apparently dispatched to external breaches as intended by whoever orchestrated the attack. The massive iron doors stood partially open, soft purple light spilling from within accompanied by the distinctive harmonic humming of forming rifts. Issei paused, extending one hand toward the doorway. Crimson energy gathered around his fingertips as he traced complex patterns in the air, a detection spell of some kind, Rias realized. 3 presences within, he murmured. 1 vampire, 1, unclear, possibly human but modified. The 3rd registers as void space, likely abyssal entity or someone shielded by dimensional technology. Direct confrontation, Rias asked, gathering her own power in preparation. No, Issei decided after brief consideration. Observation first. They believe external attacks have drawn all defenders away. Let's determine their objective before revealing our presence. With preternatural stealth, they slipped through the partially opened doors into shadow-draped archives. Following the purple illumination, they navigated between towering shelves toward the chamber's center where the light pulsed brightest. Concealed behind ancient stone sarcophagus, they observed the intruders. Farid Batori stood beside an ornate pedestal, his usual playful demeanor replaced by intense concentration as he manipulated controls on device identical to those in Valley's hologram. Across from him, a young man with unusual features, blonde hair, blue eyes that seemed to glow faintly, and an expression of detached serenity, examined artifacts from nearby shelves with clinical interest. Most concerning was the 3rd figure, Risvam Lucifer, exactly as they'd encountered him previously, though now wearing what appeared to be technological augmentation over his formal attire. He held ancient manuscript before a forming rift, allowing purple energy to wash over its pages as if scanning contents. The Convergence Codex isn't here, Riasvam announced with evident disappointment. Our intelligence suggested Issei Hyodo preserved the complete prophecy in his personal collection. Perhaps our dimensional counterparts received incorrect information, Farad suggested, continuing adjustments to the device. This reality may differ in key historical details. The Crimson Emperor exists in this variant, Riasvam countered. The prophecy must exist here as well. The Abyssal Ones confirm 13 key realities approaching convergence point, with this dimension serving as primary nexus. The blonde youth spoke, his voice carrying unusual harmonic quality. The prophecy text itself matters less than identifying the nexus artifacts. If this reality's vampire king possesses even one such artifact, dimensional stabilization becomes possible, or complete destabilization, Riasvam smiled with disturbing enthusiasm. Depending on one's objectives. Farad's expression revealed nothing. His thoughts as he completed adjustments to the device. Portal stabilized. You have approximately 12 minutes before Fortress detection systems identify internal breach despite external distractions. Ample time, Riasvam assured him, setting aside the manuscript to examine other artifacts. The Seraph experiment progresses adequately in your reality, Farad. Our mutual benefactor grows impatient for results. Mika shows promising adaptation to the seraphic implants, Farad reported. Though his loyalty remains questionable, still fixated on finding his lost human family despite evidence of their demise. Sentimentality, Riasvam dismissed with casual cruelty. Useful for manipulation but ultimately irrelevant to our purposes. When barriers collapse completely, such attachments become meaningless anyway. The blonde youth interrupted with sudden alertness. We're not alone. All three turned toward the sarcophagus, giving Issei and Rias bare seconds to determine response. With silent communication born from Sideshow's direct confrontation rather than attempted escape sure to fail against such opponents. Issei moved first, emerging from concealment with royal authority rather than battle readiness, a calculated approach suggesting political confrontation rather than immediate aggression. Lord Bottori, he addressed the vampire with dangerous calm. Curious finding why. You here when reports placed you at southern defensive position. Unauthorized access to restricted archives constitutes serious breach of protocol, particularly during crisis response. Farad recovered quickly from surprise, his theatrical personality reasserting itself as he bowed with exaggerated deference. Your Majesty, what fortunate timing. We've captured interdimensional intruders attempting to steal ancient artifacts. The transparent attempt at deception might have seemed laughable had circumstances been less dire. Riasvam's amused expression confirmed he found Farad's improvisation entertaining rather than convincing. Fascinating narrative construction, Riasvam commented. Creative, if entirely implausible given observed evidence. He turned to Issei with casual disregard for potential threat. We meet again, Crimson Emperor. Or should I use your original name? So many identities across so many realities, it becomes difficult tracking which version knows what about their own fragmented existence. Issei's expression revealed nothing, though Rias sensed dangerous power gathering around him like storm clouds before lightning strike. Your interdimensional sabotage ends now, he stated with quiet finality. The destabilization device will be confiscated and your access to this reality terminated. Such confidence, Riasvam smiled indulgently. Admirable, if misplaced. You still don't understand what's happening, do you? Despite all your millennia collecting knowledge, despite the fragments of prophecy you've hoarded. He gestured to their surroundings. All this preparation, yet you remain reactive rather than proactive. Disappointing. The blonde youth stepped forward, his movements carrying inhuman grace. Temporal window closing. Security protocols WILL override external distraction parameters in approximately 7 minutes. Indeed, Riasvam acknowledged. Much as I'd enjoy lengthy philosophical debate about dimensional ethics and cosmic restructuring. Business demands attention elsewhere. With casual gesture, he activated device on his wrist. The rift behind them pulsed with increased energy, expanding rapidly. Unlike chaotic tears from previous incursions, this portal maintained stable configuration even as its diameter grew. A parting gift, Riasvam announced, removing small crystalline sphere from his pocket. Consider it Educat, ional demonstration regarding abyssal entities' true capabilities when properly directed. Before either Issei or Rias could react, he hurled the sphere toward nearby shelving. Upon impact, it shat red into prismatic fragments that immediately began pulsing with sickly purple light. From each fragment, shadow stuff extruded like living ink, forming rapidly into abyssal creatures more defined than previous encounters. These possessed distinct anatomical features suggesting deliberate design rather than chaotic manifestation. Recent refinements allow greater control over their morphology, Rias explained with disturbing pride. These specimens were specifically engineered for combating vampire physiology. Fascinating research application, don't you think? The creatures moved with coordinated purpose, forming defensive perimeter between the interdimensional intruders and Issei's position. Unlike mindless aggression displayed in previous encounters, these entities demonstrated tact. Ical intelligence, maintaining formation while steadily advancing to force their opponents backward. Most enlightening visit, Rias concluded, stepping toward the portal with Ferret and the blonde youth. We'll continue interdimensional discussions soon enough, when barriers collapse completely. The convergence waits for no being, regardless of temporal manipulation attempts. As they retreated toward dimensional doorway, Issei launched attack with blinding speed, crimson energy coalescing into physical force that shattered the creatures in his path. Rias followed his lead, her power of destruction carving path through remaining entities as they raced to prevent escape. They reached the portal seconds too late. Rias's mocking laughter echoed as the dimensional doorway collapsed upon itself, leaving behind only the stabilization device now emitting alarm-like tone as its components overloaded. Down, Issei commanded, pulling Rias behind massive stone table as the device detonated. Crystalline shrapnel embedded itself in surrounding shelving as purple-black energy discharged in concussive wave that rattled artifacts throughout the chamber. When dust settled, they emerged to find remaining abyssal entities continuing methodical advance, unaffected by their creator's departure and apparently programmed to eliminate all present regardless of changing circumstances. Containment priority, Issei stated, his voice deadly calm despite betrayal and interdimensional threats just witnessed. These specimens represent evolution beyond previous encounters. We need live capture if possible for study. Rias nodded understanding, modifying her approach accordingly. Rather than raw destructive force, she channeled power into precisely controlled binding formations, crimson RGY weaving cage-like structures that disrupted abyssal entities' connection to physical reality without completely destroying their manifestation. Issei employed different technique, blood magic form. In complex geometric patterns beneath creatures' feet, each symbol pulsing with ancient power that gradually forced ethereal bodies into more substantial form vulnerable to conventional containment. Working in coordinated tandem that belied their brief acquaintance, they systematically contained the abyssal entities until only one remained, larger than its companions with more distinct features suggesting greater evolution toward physical permanence in their reality. This creature proved more challenging, demonstrating adaptive countermeasures against their techniques. When Rias attempted binding formation, it phase shifted partially beyond conventional space-time. When Issei deployed blood sigils, it reconfigured its molecular structure to avoid specific frequencies targeted. Intelligence beyond programmed parameters, Issei observed with clinical detachment despite imminent danger. It's learning through direct interaction. The entity suddenly charged, not toward them as expect, but toward still sparking remains of dimensional device. Before they could intercept, it enveloped broken components within its amorphous form. Technological fragments disappeared into shadow substa. NCE's creature began emitting same harmonic frequency as stabilized rifts. It's trying to reopen portal, Rias realized, or signal across dimensional barriers. Issei's response came without hesitation. Not defensive containment but overwhelming offensive deployment. Crimson energy exploded from his extended hands, not as raw force but precisely calibrated frequencies Rias recognized as diamonds. Ional anchoring pattern similar to equipment they'd been provided earlier. Isolation protocol, he explained tersely. Preventing interdimensional communication while maintaining specimen integrity for study. The creature writhed as ancillary dimensional connections were severed, leaving it fully manifested in their reality without escape options. Its struggles gradually subsided as Issei maintained pressure, eventually becoming dormant within containment field they established cooperatively. When security forces finally arrived, delayed by coordinated external attacks, they found Vampire K. Ing and Devil Visitor calmly securing interdimensional entity while analyzing sabotage evidence with methodical precision. Secure this chamber, Issei commanded arriving guards. Calls for abyssal specimens, and issue immediate arrest order for Lord Farid Badori on charges of high treason against Vampire Realm. The announcement sent shockwaves through assembled security forces. A progenitor AC. CUSED of treason represented unprecedented political upheaval within vampire hierarchy. Yet none questioned the command, moving with disciplined efficiency to implement orders despite obvious concern. As specialized containment teams secured abyssal specimens, Issei examined manuscript Riasvam had discarded, ancient pages covered with text in language Rias couldn't decipher but recognized from prophecy books shown earlier. They sought specific information about the convergence, he murmured, careful handling suggesting priceless historical significance. Riasvam mentioned Nexus artifacts, object CTS capable of stabilizing or destabilizing dimensional barriers permanently. Do such artifacts exist? Rias asked, joining his examination while maintaining cautious distance from potentially dangerous knowledge. Legends mention 13 objects of power distributed across separated realities, Issei confirmed, turning pages with careful precision. Created simultaneously when barriers were established, each containing fragment of original unified reality. His expression revealed growing concern as he reached particular passage. According to prophecy, when barriers weaken sufficiently, Nexus artifacts activate independently, drawing toward central convergence point through dimensional attraction similar to gravitational force. And that convergence point is here. This reality, not precisely. Issei closed the manuscript, decision evidently made regarding information sharing. The prophecy speaks not of place but person, the Crimson Emperor whose existence spans multiple realities simultaneously, serving as living nexus through which dimensions reconnect. Understanding dawned across Rias's features. That's why Riasvam targeted this reality specifically. That's why I recognized you despite differences between worlds. You're the convergence point connecting all 13 dimensions. A theory requiring verification, Issei cautioned, though his tone suggested he'd reached similar conclusion independently, but consistent with available evidence and Riasvam's apparent objectives. Before discussion could continue, Krul Tepes arrived with battle damage Evid. And across her formal attire, torn fabric and lingering bloodstains suggesting direct combat rather than command center coordination as instructed. External breaches contained, she reported without preamble. Unusual retreat pattern observed. Entities withdrew simultaneously across all fronts once internal alarms activated. Coordinated tactical response rather than mindless aggression. Confirming our assessment, Issei nodded toward contained specimens. These entities demonstrate significant evolution compared to initial incursions. Deliberate design rather than random manifestation. Ul's expression darkened as she surveyed chamber evidence. Farid's involvement, confirmed beyond doubt, Issei replied, unusual edge entering his typically controlled tone. Direct collaboration interdimensional entities including Riasvam Lucifer. Treason proceedings will commence immediately upon his capture. If capture proves possible, Krul noted pragmatically. Farid's escape through dimensional portal suggests he anticipated potential exposure. Contingency plans likely established long before today's events. Security forces reported perimeter stabilization complete, all Rift's successfully closed through combined vampire and human resistance efforts. Casualties remained minimal considering attack scale, suggestive of distraction operation rather than serious invasion attempt. Political consequences require immediate attention, Krul advised as they departed archives toward council chambers. Progenitor accused of treason creates power vacuum affecting multiple territories. Lest Carr will undoubtedly attempt leveraging circumstances for personal advancement. Issei nodded agreement with assessment. Convene emergency council session. Full disclosure regarding dimensional threats necessary despite tradition of information control. Current circumstances supersede normal secrecy protocols. As they traversed fortress corridors toward political confrontations ahead, Rias observed interaction between Vampire King and Queen with growing understanding. Their relationship transcended mere political alliance, centuries of shared history evident in how they communicate. communicated through minimal words and subtle expressions. Not romantic connection but something perhaps more significant, mutual respect between immortal beings who'd witnessed countless historical upheavals together. What role do you envision for me in council proceedings? Rias inquired, recognizing importance of establishing clear diplomatic position amid escalating crisis. Honored witness from parallel reality. Issei replied without hesitation. Your perspective provides crucial confirmation regarding interdimensional nature of current threats. Additionally, your knowledge of Risvam Lucifer from alternate world offers strategic advantage in anticipating his methods and objectives. The answer demonstrated political acumen alongside practical tactical considerations, offering Rias meaning. GFUL participation while maintaining appropriate boundaries for outsider involvement in vampire governance. This version of Issei operated with diplomatic sophistication. Her own Issei was still developing. Centuries of political maneuvering having honed natural leadership abilities into refined statecraft. They arrived at council chambers to find most progenitors already assembled, the vampire hierarchy's efficiency in crisis response evident in how quickly governance mechanisms activated despite ongoing security operations throughout Fortress. Conversations ceased immediately upon Issei's entrance, all attention focusing on their sovereign with mixture of respect, curiosity, and calculation. Progenitors of the eternal night, Issei addressed them without preamble. We face unprecedented threat requiring full disclosure of matters previously restricted to highest echelons. The dimensional barriers separating realities have begun systematic collapse, not through natural degradation but deliberate sabotage coordinated across multiple worlds. He gestured to Rias, formally introducing her as representative from parallel dimension with direct knowledge of key antagonists. The vampire nobility studied her with reactions ranging from obvious skepticism to cautious interest. Most concerning, Issei continued, evidence confirms Lord Farid Badori's direct participation in dimensional sabotage alongside entities from parallel realities including self-proclaimed devil Risvam Lucifer. Shocked murmurs spread through chamber, accusation against progenitor representing unprecedented political earthquake within vampire hierarchy. Lest Carr seized immediate opportunity, rising from his alcove with performative outrage. Extraordinary claims demand extraordinary evidence, he challenged. Farid Badori's service spans centuries. Accusations of interdimensional conspiracy seem convenient method for eliminating political rival. Evidence secured in restricted archives. Krul countered before Issei needed respond. Including dimensional technology of non-vampire origin and abyssal entities specifically modified for anti-vampire combat applications. Multiple witnesses confirmed Lord Badori's direct collaboration with interdimensional saboteurs. Giles, ever the pragmatic military mind, focused on immediate tactical concerns rather than political implications. Current security status. Fortress defenses. All external breaches contained, Issei reported. Defenses restored to full capacity with enhanced monitoring for dimensional anomalies. Human Resistance forces cooperated effectively per temporary alliance terms. Notable performance against Southern Incursion where units struggled against modified abyssal entities. The practical Acnal GM. End of human effectiveness surprised many council members, challenging long-held assumptions about livestock's capabilities. Before debate could develop along these lines, the chamber doors opened to admit unexpected arrival, Shinoa Hiragi. Still bearing her massive scythe and accompanied by single guard rather than previous security detail. Her entrance created immediate tension, vampire nobles instinctively reacting to apex human predator in their sanctum. Yet Issei merely nodded acknowledgement as if her presence were expected despite obvious breach of normal protocols. The human resistance leader brings relevant intelligence, he explained to startled council. Temporary alliance terms include information sharing regarding dimensional threats. Shinoa approached with characteristic blend of casual confidence and barely concealed hostility. Despite formal meeting rather than battlefield encounter, she maintained firm grip on her weapon. Practical caution rather than diplomatic discourtesy. Interdimensional rifts appeared simultaneously across 3 human settlements, she reported without greeting or acknowledgement of vampire protocol. Pattern matches vampire territory incursions exactly. Entities specifically targeted our curse gear production facilities and research archives. Significant strategic information, Rias recognized immediately. The coordinated attacks targeted knowledge repositories and defensive capabilities across both vampire and human territories, systematic attempt to weaken potential resistance against dimensional incursion. Additionally, Shinoa continued, gaze fixed on Issei rather than broader council. 2 humans disappeared during attacks. Not killed, specifically extracted by entities demonstrating intelligence and purpose. Both individuals possessed Seraph-modified bloodlines from earlier experimentation. The information caused visible reaction from several council members, suggesting significance beyond what Rias could interpret from limited context. Issei's expression revealed nothing, though Krul's momentary tension indicated concerning implications. Seraph bloodlines hold significance regarding dimensional barriers. Issei questioned directly. Shinoa's expression combined reluctance and pragmatism, balancing protection of human secrets against necessity of information sharing during existential threat. Rias shares theorize angelic heritage creates natural resonance with dimensional frequencies, she finally acknowledged. Individuals with activated Seraph genes demonstrate sensitivity to barrier fluctuations. Some reported visions of other realities before physical rifts manifested. Crucial information regarding dimensional mechanics, yet offered with obvious calculation, revealing enough to demonstrate alliance value while protecting deeper human secrets. Rias recognized sophisticated diplomatic approach belying Shinoa's youthful appearance and casual demeanor. Similar sensitivity may explain targeted abduction of specific vampires during earlier incursions, Krul noted, connecting implications across species boundaries. 3 missing nobles possessed unusual bloodlines with potential angelic contamination from ancient crossbreeding experiments. Pieces assembled into disturbing pattern, systematic collection of beings with specific genetic traits across vampire and human populations. Whatever Riasvam and his interdimensional conspirators planned, it apparently required living subjects with particular bloodline characteristics. Council discussion expanded to address immediate security concerns. Diplomatic arrangements between species, and strategic resource allocation against anticipated future incursions. Throughout complex negotiations, Issei maintained authoritative presence without dominating proceedings, allowing various perspectives expression while guiding toward practical conclusions. Rias observed vampire politics with fascination, noting how ancient beings blank immediate crisis response against centuries-old grudges and ambitions. Despite existential threat facing all, factional interests remained evident in subtle positioning and calculated support for various proposals. When formal proceedings concluded with concrete action plans established, Issei requested private audience with Rias and Shinoa, unusual grouping that raised eyebrows among departing council members but generated no direct challenge to sovereign's prerogative. They adjourned to small strategic chamber adjacent to main council hall, intimate space with single round table and comfort. Table seating rather than formal thrones or hierarchical arrangements. The setting suggested equality among participants despite obvious power differentials. The Seraph connection requires further investigation. Issei stated once privacy secured. Both of you possess knowledge crucial to understanding dimensional aspects beyond vampire archives. Shinoa leaned her scythe against table edge, posture relaxing fractionally though wariness remained evident in her alert gaze. Bold assumption that I'd share human secrets with Vampire King beyond immediate crisis necessities. Not assumption but recognition of mutual interests. Issei countered without confrontation. Riasvim's interdimensional coalition targets both our species specifically. Combined knowledge offers better protection than segregated intelligence. Rias recognized diplomatic opportunity to bridge evident tension between ancient adversaries. In my world, angels, devils and fallen angels eventually formed alliance against existential threats despite millennial conflicts. Historical enmity proved less compelling than shared survival. How wonderfully inspirational, Shinoa remarked with characteristic sarcasm. Huff thoughtful calculation underlay her dismissive tone. Next you'll suggest vampires and humans should hold hands and sing harmony songs while dimensional horrors consume reality. I suggest nothing so ambitious. Issei replied with unexpected hint of humor. Merely pragmatic information exchange regarding specific connection between Seraph bloodlines and dimensional barriers. Shinoa studied him with unreadable expression before sighing dramatically. performance concealing genuine strategic decision. Fine. Limited exchange. The Hiragi clan possesses records suggesting Seraph genes originally came from beings that existed partially outside conventional reality, allowing manifestation across multiple dimensions simultaneously. Consistent with prophecy references to barrier architects, Issei noted. Beings capable of perceiving and manipulating multiple realities concurrently. Our experiments activating dormant Seraph genes produced individuals with limited interdimensional awareness. Shinoa continued reluctantly. Most subjects died from mental collapse when exposed to multiple realities simultaneously. Survivors demonstrated ability to perceive barrier fluctuations before physical manifestation. Rias connected implications to her own world's knowledge. Angels in my reality can create dimensional pockets and travel between planes more easily than other supernatural beings. Their sacred gear system manipulates reality at fundamental level. Conversation continued with cautious information sharing from all parties, Issei revealing selected vampire research into bloodline connections with primordial beings, Shinoa explaining human experiments attempting to weaponize Seraph abilities against vampire oppression, Rias contributing devil perspective on cosmic hierarchy and dimensional mechanics. Through careful triangulation between different knowledge bases, coherent theory emerged. Beings from 13 key realities possessed particular genetic markers connecting them to original unified dimension before cosmic separation. These individuals demonstrated natural resonance with dimensional barriers, potentially serving as living keys when convergence reached critical threshold. Which explains targeted abduction. Risvam collects beings with specific genetic markers, harvesting keys from multiple realities simultaneously. For what purpose though? Rias questioned. Accelerating barrier collapse or preventing it? Wrong question, Shinoa interjected with surprising insight. The barriers will collapse regardless according to prophecy. The real question is what happens afterward, whether dimensions reconnect chaotically or according to specific pattern. Issei nodded agreement with her assessment. The Nexus artifacts mentioned in prophecy. Why supposedly determine reconnection configuration, whether realities merge harmoniously or destroy each other through incompatible metaphysical structures. And these artifacts are distributed across 13 realities, Rias extrapolated. With Risvim's coalition attempting to gather them before convergence completes. While abducting individuals with genetic keys that activate said artifacts, Shinoa added grimly. Efficient multi-dimensional conspiracy. Almost admirable if not potentially apocalyptic. Their strategic assessment concluded with uncomfortable realization, information insufficient for comprehensive counter-strategy despite combined knowledge across species and dimensions. Too many variables remained unknown regarding convergence mechanics, artifact locations, and Risvim's ultimate objectives. As session concluded with agreement for continued information sharing, Fortress alarms activated once more, not urgent battle signal but measured notification pattern. N indicating incoming communication from external source. Detection network reports stable portal forming near northern perimeter, announced guard who entered with formal salute. Valley Lucifer Riku. Est's immediate audience regarding urgent interdimensional development. He claims new information about artifact locations. Issei exchanged significant glance with Rias before responding. Escort him to secondary reception hall. Limited security detail. Obvious presence but minimal engagement unless provoked. As guard departed to implement instructions, Shinoa raised questioning eyebrow. Another interdimensional traveler. Your fortress becomes quite cosmopolitan, Vampire King. Potentially valuable ally or sophisticated deceiver, Issei acknowledged with pragmatic assessment. His GE of dimensional mechanics exceeds our combined understanding, yet his ultimate allegiance remains unverified. I'll observe your interdimensional diplomacy from safe distance, Shinoa decided, shouldering her massive scythe with casual strength belying her petite frame. Human resistance needs updating regarding our evolving apocalypse anyway. Her sarcasm remained intact despite evident fatigue from extended engagement with vampire hierarchy. As she departed with characteristic blend of formal acknowledgement and subtle insolence, Rias noted how Issei watched her with complex expression Augusting respect beneath necessary political opposition. She's remarkably effective leader despite her youth, Rias observed once Shinoa departed. Circumstances forge exceptional individuals. Riga. RD less of conventional maturation timelines, Issei replied, subtle indication that he recognized parallels to his own ancient history despite not sharing details. The Hiragi have produced formidable opponents across generations. Shinoa may prove most dangerous yet, or most valuable ally depending how current crisis resolves. As they proceeded toward reception hall where Valley awaited, Rias contemplated evolving dynamics between Vampire King, human resistance, and interdimensional travelers. Crisis forced cooperation across boundaries normally impermeable, species divisions, dimensional barriers. Ancient enmities temporarily subordinated to existential threats. Whether such cooperation could survive beyond immediate danger remained uncertain. Yet watching Issei navigate complex diplomacy, sea landscape with measured authority and strategic flexibility, Rias recognized qualities her own Issei possessed in nascent form, leadership potential awaiting circumstances to catalyze development. This ancient vampire king, for all his differences from the young devil she knew, contained recognizable essence that transcended dimensional variance. The Crimson Emperor prophecy suddenly seemed less mystical abstraction and more practical recognition of fundamental connection spanning all possible realities. The question remained whether such connection would prove salvation or destruction when dimensions finally converged. Chapter 2 End. The End. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Remember to subscribe and like this video. See you in the next video.